I'm not giving up.
I am selling the building.
The final season of FX's The Bear.
The restaurant is flooded.
Everything's either gonna be okay.
No, stop!
Or not.
We are outgunned and we are outmanned, but we have each other.
FX's The Bear, the final season. All episodes now streaming on Disney+.
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
There's no doubt that there's a growing awareness and concern amongst scientists about the dangers represented to the Earth by impacts with comets and asteroids. And I'm convinced from the research that I've done into this subject over a long period of time that there has been a hidden influence operating in our history, which historians have failed to recognize. We really have a rather comfortable and arrogant view of our own past, and all we really know about our own past is based on less than 5,000 years of recorded history, when the ancient Egyptians and the Sumerians started writing things down less than 5,000 years ago.
Can we
just to finish? I mean, to draw conclusions about the nature of life and the environment that we inhabit on the Earth on the basis of just less than 5,000 years of history may be a terrible mistake. It's a pretty good bet that the scientists are right when they say it's 4,500 million years old. 4.5 billion years is a good bet. So dinosaurs were destroyed 65 million years ago and had a good 100 million years plus prior to that. Yes, a very long-lived species, which was totally obliterated 65 million years ago. And I mean, this again comes to the point because we now know why the dinosaurs became extinct.
Well, do we definitely know?
Yeah,
because
for sure. For sure.
Because they're still saying we think it might.
No,
but
no. There's no serious dispute over this matter anymore. It was disputed when the idea was first put forward that a collision with an asteroid or a comet 65 million years ago could have made the dinosaurs extinct. This idea was initially ridiculed by scientists, as almost all new ideas are. But gradually the evidence began to mount up of a layer of iridium all around the planet dating back to 65 million years ago. And what they needed was the smoking gun, the one place on the planet where we would actually see a huge crater that could be tied to this event. And that crater proved very elusive to find because the Earth is a dynamic planet. There's constant forces of erosion at work. Land that was on the surface gets buried and disappeared out of sight. But it was found, and it was found by people looking for oil in the Yucatan Peninsula off Mexico. Using gravity mapping techniques, they were looking for oil deposits, and what appeared was the outlines of an enormous crater, half in the sea, under, of course, the seabed, and half underground in the Yucatan Peninsula. And this was initially kept secret for commercial reasons by Pemex, the Mexican petroleum company that was looking for oil, but eventually the information was released. Scientists put it together, and they realized this was it. This was the smoking gun. It dated to 65 million years ago. It was an object about 10 kilometers wide. It hit the Earth at about 100,000 miles per hour, and it created a planetary cataclysm on an unbelievable scale.
I mean, did it knock the planet off its orbit, or slightly?
It would have slightly affected the orbit of the planet. It's a tall order to shift a planet out of its orbit, but this was enough of a blow to do that. But more to the point, it was an object that created global earthquakes that threw an enormous quantity of dust into the atmosphere, which then shut the planet down totally. No light reaches the planet's surface for years. Photosynthesis shuts down. Plants can't reproduce. The food chain ends.
And presumably, plants lie dormant, like seeds in a ploughed field that don't come around for 20 years.
Some lie dormant, some survive, some species do survive. It was generally reckoned that about 90% of all species on Earth were wiped out in that event.
And what sort of things survive, do you think?
Well,
Fish?
our ancestors did.
Yeah.
The ancestors of mankind did. The ancestors mammals did. Fish, so the huge quantities of fish survived and regenerated. Life regenerated itself. But this was, were such an object to hit the Earth today, no scientist in the world would put a penny on the chances of the human race surviving.
But they feel that they would. Now, I've got to take a break. We'll come back after this. Let's do this. This is Talk Radio. The vibrations, depending on the tone and the levels that they're at, and the time that you actually decided to go into this field, is going to be different. It's fascinating. You know, you can spend hours. Whales. I see. I don't know what that had to do with what we're talking about, Ash, either. I'm talking with best-selling author Graham Hancock. His new book that comes out, he reckons, this week, or maybe next week.
Yeah, it's in the shelves already.
Okay,
It's officially published this week.
Right. It's called The Mars Mysteries. It's a tale of the end of two worlds, but maybe the beginning of the realization of where we're going, or how we're going to get there anyway. When did you first become interested in this sort of thing, Graham? I mean, what's your sort of history?
Well, my background is as a journalist. I was involved in serious journalism for a long time. I was the East Africa correspondent of The Economist, based in Nairobi, and covering wars, famines, economic affairs, politics in East Africa for several years. But I moved out of that field and into another field. I mean, it's a long story, but I got interested in a strange myth in Ethiopia that the Ethiopians possessed the Ark of the Covenant, and I decided to investigate it as a journalistic investigation to see why everybody in Ethiopia believed this. And this led to a book called The Sign and the Seal, which traced the history and the story of the Ark of the Covenant. And
Did they have it?
well, I think they've got a very good claim. Nobody else in the world claims to possess it. They do, and it's a long story.
But you know, you look a bit like Indiana Jones. I thought that when you walked in, there was a sort of similarity.
You know, the funny thing, the country where my books have done best of all by far is Japan. My last book, Fingerprints of the Gods, sold 2.5 million copies in Japan, and they've turned me into a kind of cult figure in Japan. They started producing cartoon books about me in Japan, and they do me up as Indiana Jones with the hat and the whip and everything like that. I never thought I'd become a cult.
You better get out on the Strand, not the Strand, on the Mall when the Emperor comes down, just to make sure there's somebody there to wave.
Absolutely. So what happened was I got interested in historical mysteries, and this led me inevitably to Egypt, which is the heart of all mystery in the world.
Why is Egypt the heart of it? What was so special about it? I mean, it's. Before we get to that, I want to just go back a minute, because although the dinosaurs were all wiped out and they've been around for 100 million years, you reckon, do you think, as some people are suggesting, that there could well have been civilizations before that on this planet, inhabiting this planet, that could have gone the same way a few times?
Yeah, I think that we are a species with amnesia. I think we know almost nothing of the truth of our own past, and I'm convinced that there has been a lost civilization, and I think that the evidence for this is mounting to a point where it's becoming overwhelming, and where dignified and serious academics who normally regard such matters as below their concern are beginning to feel that they have to address these issues. This was the whole theme of my previous book, Fingerprints of the Gods, that there has been a lost civilization, and that later historical civilizations inherited a legacy from it. Now, I place that civilization as during the last ice age and ending with the cataclysm that brought the last ice age to an end. But just for the reason that there could have been a civilization then, I think we have to be open to the possibility that the entire evolutionary story of our species on this planet may have been misunderstood, and that there may have been earlier episodes of civilization which we haven't tracked back to. I think we should keep a very open mind on these issues rather than a closed and narrow mind, because you have to remember that the academic position on this is based on an extremely narrow database.
I mean, scientists say that the normal state of this planet is snow and ice, and that we are just living in a glitch between ice ages.
Yes, that an ice age is normal. I've heard that view from many scientists, and there's a lot of evidence to support it. There's been many ice ages, but the truth is ages, nobody really knows why an ice age starts or why it stops. But all we do know for sure is the last one stopped bloody fast. I mean, it was 100,000 years of ice sheets, which when we're talking big ice here, this stuff is 2 miles thick over Manchester, you know, and 2 miles thick over New York.
Not changed down the Manchester.
And it covers millions of square miles, and it's stable, you know, for 100,000 years, and then bang, suddenly all melts down, sea levels go up 300 to 400 feet. Again, you have mass extinctions of species, and the face of the Earth changes, and that's when our memory seems to begin. We start vaguely remembering things in myths from then, and then a few thousand years later, we start writing down history.
How important, then, is Mars to this whole business? Because in the book, The Mars Mystery, this comes out. I mean, you're drawing sort of similar parallels, aren't you? Saying that maybe there were great civilizations on Mars and that they copped it before we did.
Yes, I think that Mars is a very important part of the reawakening of our species and of the possibility that we may recover our memory. As far as we know, in the recorded memory that we have, this is the first time that we've engaged in the exploration of a neighboring planet. I believe in future years that this exploration of Mars that is underway now will be regarded as a seminal event in human history, and that we're living through a time of enormous importance, and that we may find that we're going to learn things from Mars which are extremely disturbing and unsettling.
In what way?
And cause us to cast our eyes on our own past in a different way.
What do you think we'll find? What do you think in your...
What I've tried to do in the book is address this question at some length and to gather together all the best evidence that exists in one place on what we know about Mars now. And it is an extraordinarily mysterious planet. The first part of the mystery is, here's a planet about half the size of the Earth, which is more Earth-like than any other planet in the solar system. It's a planet which definitely had huge reserves of water. It had oceans, it had lakes, it had rivers that ran for hundreds of millions of years. It had rainfall that poured down out of a dense and possibly breathable atmosphere. It may have had a rather lush, almost like a Garden of Eden type of environment. And there's no serious dispute about the presence of water, which is a fundamental prerequisite for life on Mars. And then suddenly, and nobody really knows when this happened, this whole positive environment was wiped away, wiped out at a stroke. And what confronts us now is a corpse orbiting in space, a scarred, devastated corpse of a planet.
Could it have been nuclear annihilation?
No, I don't believe that. I think that the evidence is very clear on what happened to Mars. Mars was destroyed by a massive bombardment of rock from outer space, and
scientists are now beginning to say.
Yeah, there's really no doubt about this. This is what happened to Mars. The question is, what exactly was the nature of this bombardment, and is it something that's dangerous to the Earth as well? And I believe it is, and that this is the first thing that Mars is beginning to wake us up to.
Right, let's...
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
Tomorrow morning is knocking. Stock your fridge now. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or a sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel, maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
Go through this a little bit. So what we're saying is that these meteors that didn't strike Mars and didn't strike Earth all those years ago are still within the orbits of, they come around. I mean, we've just had Hale-Bopp that everybody saw up there for ages, hanging around in the sky, and nobody was there.
The ancients regarded an object like Hale-Bopp with awe and terror, and I believe that they did so for a reason. When a comet was seen appearing in our skies, this was seen as an omen of disaster, and the evidence suggests to me that comets are are and should be linked with disaster, and that we need to wake up to the danger that they represent. Let me just tell you a little bit about the story of Mars, because it's a very bizarre thing. Running all the way around the planet is what is effectively a sheer line of cliffs, like an equator running around the planet, but actually tilted at about 35 degrees to the actual equator of the planet. It divides the planet into two hemispheres. South of that hemisphere, there are thousands and thousands of enormous craters. One of those craters is 2,000 kilometers in diameter and 5 kilometers deep. And there are 3,000 craters which have got 30-kilometer diameters. The southern hemisphere is just completely smashed to bits and pulverized. But that hemisphere is 3 kilometers higher than the northern hemisphere. You envisage a sheer line of cliffs, and then it drops down.
Is it not twisted on it?
Well, this is a question that I've tried to address in the Mars Mystery. What could be the reason for what they call the line of dichotomy that divides the planet into two distinct hemispheres, with a high southern hemisphere massively cratered and a much lower northern hemisphere which is smooth and appears to have lost its crust? There's no doubt that what caused this was a bombardment. The question is the nature of that bombardment. And what I've done in the book is to look into the latest, the most credible scientific work that's being done in this field. And the most credible scientific work that's being done in this field says comets are the danger to planets, and that they're something like Hale-Bopp or Halley's Comet may reach a size of 30 or 40 kilometers in the nucleus. That's the head of the comet. But it's now known for sure that there are such things as giant comets in the solar system, which have no known upper limit. They may be 300 to 400 kilometers in diameter. They're winging through space at thousands and thousands of miles per hour. Some of them cross the orbits of the planets like Mars and Earth. And we know from what happened to Jupiter in 1994 with comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 that a comet can break up into dozens of fragments. Shoemaker-Levy 9 broke up into 21 fragments. All 21 of those fragments hit Jupiter. If those fragments had hit the Earth, it would have been the end of life on Earth. So we know comets hit planets, and we know that comets fragment.
Okay, so was Hale-Bopp possibly the forerunner of a huge amount of that are coming around, which is why people use...
See, trouble with comets is you just don't know when they come.
Can't we track them on radar? Can't we?
Nobody's looking. Nobody's really looking. There is no coordinated international strategy which is getting any serious money put into it to look for comets and asteroids.
So why did NASA say the other day there was a story that came and went very quickly, within 24 hours it had been killed? The story was that there is a huge meteorite heading towards Earth, and they reckoned in about, I can't remember how many years, a couple of years, it had a 1 in 10 chance or something like that of striking this planet. And everybody was talking about it. The following day, NASA put out a story saying this is completely wrong. We've redone our calculations. It's going to miss us by about 300,000 miles.
300,000 miles, by the way, isn't very much, since the Earth travels at 66,000 miles per hour. That's 5 hours. That's a 5-hour miss. Yes, this indeed was the case. It seemed that the Earth was threatened, and then NASA calmed the story down. Actually, I feel very uncomfortable about all of those calculations because it's too early to be sure exactly what this object is going to do. What is sure is it's going to pass very near to the Earth.
We're definitely sure that this is a huge meteorite.
Yeah, it's an asteroid. And it is on an Earth-crossing orbit, and we are going to miss it according to the calculations, but not really by that much. What it tells us is that the more we look out there, the more we start seeing big, dangerous, unpredictable objects that are coming at us out of the blue.
But is there anything we could do? I mean, is there any point in worrying about it?
Yeah, there's a great deal of point in worrying about it. There's two things about
comets. You need to pay the bank manager back for a start.
There's two things that can be done that make this kind of disaster different from other disasters. The first thing is that unlike earthquakes, unlike volcanic eruptions, like a collision between the Earth and a comet could actually end all life on this planet. It could sterilize this planet and make it a place that no life will ever live on again. No other disaster can do that. Secondly, it's the only kind of natural disaster on this scale that we might have some real hope of preventing if we're prepared to put the effort and the energy and the imagination into doing it. The more we have people on the basis of absolutely no evidence who say, no, it's impossible. We know that the Earth's never going to get hit by a comet and it only happens every 100 million years, and let's not think about it. then the less likely it is that it's going to happen. Our species has huge resources. We spend vast amounts of money on the military. We put amazing ingenuity into working out ways to destroy each other. Look at this grotesque act of vandalism that India committed with the explosion of nuclear weapons along the border with Pakistan, and the grotesque act of vandalism that our own governments and the government of America and Britain, just simply in maintaining these weapons of destruction, carry out, and the money that is put into inventing ways to kill fellow human beings. If we just shave off 1/10 of the amount of money that the Earth is presently spending on destruction and devote it to surveys of Earth-crossing asteroids and comets, this would be money very well spent. Nobody would be hurt by it. If we find that there isn't anything there that's going to hit us, so much the better. But I really believe it's worth looking.
I thought there was a department in NASA that was actually doing that.
NASA disposes of $13,000 million a year in its annual budget. It spends $1 million a year on asteroid surveys. This is a pittance. Okay.
Do you think that we are reaching a time? I mean, I know that our orbit changes, doesn't it? We're reaching a time at the end of the millennium where the orbit we're going to be at the furthest junction from the sun or something. We're going to be on I'm not sure, but
no, we're not at extreme eccentricity at the moment. I personally do believe that we're living in a very strange and interesting time. And it is a time when people are waking up and we're shaking off rigid patterns of thought and starting to be open to extraordinary possibilities. Many people now do ask themselves fundamental questions about what is the meaning of life? Why am I alive? What's the purpose of life? What does it mean to live on a planet, to be given this incredible gift of experiencing life on a planet? And what does it mean to possibly lose it all?
We're coming up to that time when all the planets are going to be in a line.
There will be an alignment of the planets on the 5th of May in the year 2000.
Is that going to give us any sort of problem with, I don't know.
The argument has been that the combined gravitational pull of 5 planets in a straight line with the Earth on the other side of the Sun could affect the orbit of the Earth, could cause the crust of the Earth to shift. I'm not sure whether that's right or not. I just think that, again, it's a sign of an awakening cosmic awareness that there's stuff going on out there that we really need to know about, and we've got to stop being blind and deaf to it.
What do you think the civilization on Mars was like? Do you think that it was a civilization like our own? Do you think it was...
I don't know whether there was a civilization on Mars. What I've tried to do in the book is show that we should be open to this possibility. Our scientists... great men like Carl Sagan, for example, do not regard it as a lunatic, I mean, the late Carl Sagan, unfortunately, do not regard it as a lunatic idea that there is life elsewhere in the universe. On the contrary, most reasonable objective scientists regard it as a lunatic idea to assume that we're the only form of life in the universe. So what a ridiculous Earth-centered idea that is. If there's life here, there should be life elsewhere. So there's a tendency. I heard one of your listeners calling in just before I came in, who was saying that I don't know anything about this guy with the stigmata, and I don't really care either. But he was saying that that he must be a fraud because he talked about extraterrestrials. Well, I'm sorry, I don't get that. Talking about extraterrestrials is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. There are billions of stars like the sun, and around them are billions and billions of planets. And odds are, on some of those planets there's life. We should be open to this possibility. There's a possibility that there was a civilization on Mars, and there's some intriguing evidence which suggests this. The tendency of most scientists up to now has been to dismiss that evidence, which takes the form of structures that look a bit like pyramids. An object that looks a bit like a face may not be pyramids, may not be a face, may just be weird geology. There's some odd mathematical arrangements connecting these various objects, and quite frankly, if that mathematics came in a radio signal from deep space, every scientist in the world would say it was a sign of intelligent life.
Why is Egypt so important?
Egypt's important because it's the memory bank of mankind. It's the one place. It's the earliest high civilization that we remember. And the ancient Egyptians were born, it seems, fully formed right at the beginning. They were building pyramids, the most extraordinary monuments on the face of the earth. I mean, the Great Pyramid weighs 6 million tons. It's 450 feet high. It's perfectly aligned to due north, south, east, and west. And we are asked to believe that this was built by a people with almost no experience of construction whatsoever. It doesn't make sense.
Maybe it wasn't man-made.
Well, I think it was man-made, and I think it was made in 2500 BC when it's supposed to have been made. But the Egyptians said that they inherited all their knowledge from a former time. They said that they received a legacy.
El 2026 FIFA World Cup Meal llegó a McDonald's con 9 vasos legendarios. En el lineup tenemos Christian CP10 Pulisic, David Beckham, Lamine The Dream Yamal, Ronaldinho El Mago, Monsieur Titi Henry, Son Salih Heung-min, Alfonso Fonsi Davis, Santi Bebote Jiménez y en la portería el que no necesita apodo, Grimes.
Llévate uno de 9 vasos legendarios con el FIFA World Cup Meal. En McDonald's participantes solo por tiempo limitado. Hasta agotar existencias.
To ask us, why did these people in these times know so much about the heavens? They didn't have telescopes. They couldn't see. How do they know all these things?
They knew an amazing amount. They saw, for example, the constellation of Orion, which they identified with the god Osiris as a place of rebirth, a place of creation. And we now know that the Orion Nebula is a star factory producing new stars, giving birth to new stars. How did they know that? The ancient Maya of Central America also called Orion the place of creation. If you read the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead, there are astonishing passages which appear to describe the life of a star, how it makes a vast journey for millions of years traveling through space. They do seem to have had a sophisticated knowledge of the cosmos, and they realized what we don't realize, that our life here on the Earth, in this little local environment of ours, is governed and controlled by things that happen at the galactic level very distantly. And they related themselves to the galaxy and to the cosmos, whereas up till now, up till our own generation, we human beings have related ourselves to our own pathetic, petty little concerns.
Now, there have been a number of theories. I'll take a break in a moment, Ashes. Okay. There have been a number of theories, Eric von Daniken, I'm sure everybody's familiar with, and different things that are thinking that maybe at this particular time there was a visitation from another world. But is there a possibility that the Egyptians had contact, had knowledge, if you like, of a former civilization on this planet that told them these things?
I'm convinced that that's the case. I believe that a great civilization did exist on the Earth during the last ice age, and that it was destroyed in the cataclysm that brought the ice age to an end, and that there were some survivors. As all the myths and legends of the world say, the flood of Noah is just one of thousands of stories that speak of this event, and that some of those survivors settled in Egypt, and the Egyptian myths speak of this. They call it the first time. They call it the time when the gods came to Egypt and brought the knowledge of civilization with them and set about in Egypt a process that would reconstruct the former world of the gods. And the Egyptians tell us that this was thousands of years before the first pharaoh of the first dynasty ever sat on the throne, and that knowledge was passed down from the first time to the pharaohs, and that the pharaohs were the descendants of this earlier, I can only read it as an earlier civilization. But oddly, they also do say that the gods came from the sky, from the stars, and I'm not sure what emphasis to put on that.
So where did we lose this information? Where has it got to? Why has it gone?
Well, it's gone because the Earth suffered a phenomenal cataclysm about 12,000, 13,000 years ago at the end of the last ice age. This was big. I mean, this was very bad. This was a global flood. This was 70% of all species rendered extinct.
Do you believe that maybe the story of Noah in the Bible is actually what they were talking about?
I think it's one of our accumulated faint, vague memories of a forgotten episode in human history and of the survivors of a great cataclysm. And what intrigues me, and really what connected me from this line of research to Mars, is that cataclysm was caused by impacts with fragments of a comet.
And so it may well have bounced off Mars or hit Mars, broken up into Mars and come down and then hit us on the way through.
I think the same object that wiped out Mars was also responsible for the end of the last ice age on Earth, and has been responsible for subsequent disasters on the Earth, and will be responsible for future disasters.
Now, what I was going to say is, now what goes around comes around. I mean, presumably it didn't go out of our solar system, and it's just on a long thousand years cycle.
The theory in brief is that a giant comet, somewhere in the region of 300 to 400 kilometers in diameter, falls into the inner solar system as a result, and I can explain how this process works. There's been great scientific work done on this by men like Victor Klube and Bill Napier. Falls into the inner solar system, fragments somewhere in the inner solar system, and I'm the first person in the Mars mystery to suggest that this fragmentation happened right in the face of Mars and was responsible for the destruction of Mars. And then the orbit of this comet was across the orbit of Mars and across the orbit of the Earth, and that the fragments, the remaining fragments, those that didn't hit Mars, continued on that Earth-crossing orbit and have periodically visited the Earth with cataclysms. During the last 20,000 years, the best evidence suggests, and I find here the work of Sir Fred Hoyle and Chandra Wickram Singh at Cardiff University support this very strongly, that at 10,500 BC and 8,500 BC, approximately, the Earth was hit by two fragments of comets. These were responsible for ending the last ice age and for the cataclysm that I believe wiped out a great civilization on the Earth. And that there were later impacts around about 2,300 BC. There was a piece in the press about that today, which was responsible for the sudden demise of historical civilizations at that time, and that there have been subsequent impacts. But the most worrying thing is that in this stream of debris, which is called the Taurid meteor stream, some calculations suggest there may be an object 30 kilometers wide, which we haven't seen yet. A comet, when it isn't active, a fragment of a comet which is dark, is amongst the darkest things in the solar system. You can hardly see it. It reflects less than 4% of light that strikes it. So we have a dark, deadly, lurking ghost floating out there, which can, or vampire, which can strike this planet at any time.
Conspiracy theory. Do governments know more than we know? And are they keeping it from us?
Yes, governments definitely know more than we know. Any fool knows that. We're clearly kept in the dark about a great deal of things by governments. It's government policy not to inform their citizens of everything that goes on, and this is regarded as sensible and right behavior by most governments. But the possibility has to be recognized that governments may know more about a comet threat to the Earth than they're letting on, and that rationale could be found within government why it isn't necessary or it isn't wise to inform the public of this. So I think we have to be open to the possibility of government conspiracies, but not to be driven mad by it, you know.
Because it seems to me that every time we get pictures, and we get a few stories in the news, great pictures back from so-and-so space mission, and then they disappear, or they say you can't see this, or you can't make it out, or...
A very odd way of handling information, particularly with NASA, and particularly with information...
Well, I spoke to NASA the other day, and they said, oh, we put everything we get on the internet. But they clearly don't.
No, they don't. I mean, the first two images of the so-called face on Mars were taken in 1976 by the Viking orbiter, and... within minutes of the first image having been received, it was released by NASA, but it was released in a context which immediately rendered it harmless. It was released in a context that said, how interesting, this looks like a face, but actually it's a trick of light and shadow. And we know it's a trick of light and shadow because a few moments later, another picture was taken, or rather a few hours later, another picture was taken, and it didn't look like a face anymore. That statement wasn't true. No picture was taken a few hours later, but one was taken 35 days later, which didn't resurface from the archives for almost 10 years, and that picture also showed an object that looks strikingly like a face. Now, NASA has rephotographed the face on Mars this year, in April 1996, and that image was immediately put on the internet, and the image didn't look much like a face. It looked like what somebody described as a bit of cat litter, actually. And that image was picked up by a surprising number of newspapers around the world and was run under headlines like NASA defaces Mars. 5 hours later, NASA put out another image, somewhat enhanced, which looked much more like a face. And further work has been done with image enhancement on this image, which was shot through heavy cloud in very unfavorable conditions. And the more image enhancement is done, the more it resumes the appearance of a gigantic face with a very regular enclosure around it, which is extremely hard to explain naturally. As I say, it may be
in your book as well.
Yeah, it may be weird geology. I think we have to be open to both possibilities, but I think it's extraordinarily irresponsible of us as a species, with all these funds that we have to dispose of, that we're not spending a bit more investigating this mystery, because the face on Mars isn't the only object that might be artificial. It's in a region called Sidonia, which is just littered with structures, objects that don't appear to be entirely natural. It's something that I've racked my brains over for a long time, and have addressed in the book. Is this very question, because there's no doubt that there is great public interest in the possibility of extraterrestrial life, and particularly if there might be evidence of it on a neighboring planet. There's a lingering tendency amongst scientists, and actually Eric von Daniken, who you mentioned earlier, is in large part responsible for this, that anybody who talks seriously about the possibility of extraterrestrial life close to the Earth is going to be branded as a lunatic. And a lot of scientists are deeply reluctant to get into this area because they're afraid for their own careers and their own reputations, so they don't want to do it. And I think that in NASA there has been a substantial mindset in place that there just couldn't have been an intelligent civilization on Mars, and therefore these objects that have been photographed on Mars must be natural. But I sometimes wonder, looking at the way that this story has been handled by NASA over the years, whether there isn't some other kind of agenda operating behind the scenes. I've tried very hard not to be paranoid in this book, and not to succumb to the natural tendency to assume that any big bureaucracy is involved in dark conspiracies. But there are some very odd things about the way NASA has behaved. I mean, the way that it welcomed the issue of microbes on Mars, and it did really play that for every penny it was worth to attract more funding for its work on Mars. And yet, having gone that far, I mean, it says, yes, we believe that there was microbial life on Mars 3 billion years ago. And they keep emphasizing, but only very primitive life. Well, quite frankly, as far as we know, there was only very primitive life on the Earth 3 billion years ago as well. And it seems to me that evidence for primitive life on Mars 3 billion years ago constitutes a prima facie case for evolution leading to much more advanced life on Mars at a later date. So I think there's been a lot of contradictions in NASA's position on this. There's no doubt that NASA have lied, directly lied over the status of the face on Mars, saying that it had been disproved to be a face by a disconfirming photograph a few hours later, when this was not true. This is on the record, it is a fact.
Did they ever answer the criticism of why they lied?
They've never explained why they've lied. And when I look at their behavior over the last 20 plus years on this issue, it seems to have been a kind of double strategy of releasing some tantalizing information on the one hand, and then attempting to downplay it on the other. So like they have their cake and eat it as well at the same time.
Put your headphones on. Let's take a couple of calls. Nigel is in Cheltenham. You're on Talk Radio. Nigel through to Graham Hancock. Hi.
Hello, James. Hello, Mr. Hancock. Hi. I'm disdaining sort of all this New Age nonsense myself, but the two particular points I'd like to put to you.
Well, pause a moment, though. What do you mean by New Age nonsense?
The sort of stuff that much of what you've been saying in the last half hour.
I mean, for example, what?
This business about altering human consciousness and so on. I see no evidence for that at all. I see no grounds for it. But what I particularly like to put to you is that your assertions about a comet interfering with human history in the historical period are actually derived, aren't they, from books published by Immanuel Velikovsky in the early 50s, using chaos. And,
Velikovsky did great work on cosmic cataclysms in the 50s, but the real source of this work are men like Victor Klube at Oxford University, Bill Napier at the Royal Armagh University, Sir Fred Hoyle of Cambridge, Professor Chandra Wickram Singh, Professor of Astrophysics at Cardiff. These are the men now who are doing the great work on comets and cometary collisions with Earth. And quite frankly, what I've tried to do in my book is to popularize that work and put it before the public in a palatable form.
Yes, it's obviously a popularization.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what it intended to be.
Isn't it the case?
Actually, I'm interested. Tell me, Nigel, what is wrong with popularization of everything? Otherwise, we don't all bloody understand it.
The trouble with popularization is that people tend to start talking nonsense, for instance, about ancient Egyptian history, as Mr. Hancock.
What do you know about ancient Egyptian history?
Well, I know I'm an undergraduate reading history at Oxford.
But you're reading ancient Egyptian history?
No, I'm reading modern history.
Well, what do you know about ancient Egyptian history?
I tell you if you stopped interrupting me. I know, for instance, that the pyramids didn't, as it were, appear fully formed, but they revolve. There's the step pyramid at Saqqara, for instance.
There's 150 years of traceable archaeological evolution before the greatest stone monument that mankind has ever built. Do you think that's enough?
I think that the practice, that the art or the practice of building pyramids will actually evolve, that the ancient Egyptians did it themselves. That's
I think the ancient Egyptians did it themselves too, but I'm still puzzled how they managed to build a monument of such perfection. It's aligned to true north better than the Meridian building of the Greenwich Observatory in London. How they managed to do that in just 150 years of experience.
They learned to do this themselves, and the means by...
How did they learn to do it?
Well, by the use of their intelligence and engineering skills, of course.
That's no answer. That's just an oversimplification and generalization.
Yeah, I do. I think we're living in a wonderful time. It's a time. I personally take a lot of my own philosophy from ancient texts. I've spent, unlike an earlier caller who's studying modern history, I've spent much of the last 10 years in an intense study of ancient Egypt, to the extent that I've been able to do so, and trying to read the ancient Egyptian writings in translation, the pyramid texts, and what all of these texts tell us, and later texts as well, is that mankind is a kind of fulcrum of a cosmic struggle between good and evil, and that what makes us different from other species is that we have the power to choose. We have the power to make a choice. There's the ghastly abomination of people who kidnap and torture and murder children in our society, which is increasing today. And these people, each and every one of these people, they make a choice for evil. They make a choice to inflict misery and pain on the child that they kidnap and on the family of that child. They make a choice. And they may believe that they're going to get away with it one way or another. Whether they get caught or not seems to be the only issue that concerns them. But if you follow what the ancients taught, they tell us that we all will pay a price for our actions, and that we'll all be accountable for what we do in our life.
Does that make you religious?
And that actually it's better to be to pay your dues in this life than in the next one. And I believe that what's dawning is a realization that we are confronted by a power of choice. We are confronted by the choice of making a good world or a bad world. And I believe that the realization that we can choose, the fact that we live in a time of an awakening of understanding that we can make these choices and that it rests on our shoulders is a great time to live.
You believe in good and evil then? I mean,
yes, I do.
My problem I have with that is that I think a lot of these people are mentally sick, and that they don't think they are not actually responsible for what they do, that they are for some reason without any kind of conscience.
No, I believe they are absolutely responsible, particularly those who calculatedly plan a kidnap and torture and murder. This is an act of choice, which somebody has.
It's not the act of a sane person, though, is it?
I don't really think it matters whether the person is sane or not. I believe that the person is responsible for their actions, and I think that our society today has unfortunately made a large choice in the direction of violence and cruelty. We've created an ethic where we believe that everything is to be evaluated in material terms entirely. So if somebody has more of something, then they're somehow better, and if somebody has less of something, they're somehow worse. And because everything's weighed in material terms, because we don't think of the spiritual side of life and the spiritual side of our actions, it is possible for people actually to use a fellow human being as though they are just an object, which has no meaning to them at all.
Sounds like you're talking about the Inland Revenue to me. Now, let's go back to the calls. Put your headphones on. Is that the stigmatist chewing gum there? Right. Or maybe I'm just keeping this tissue on. Maybe I'm doing him a great disservice. Maybe somebody else stuck chewing gum on my desk. John in Essex, you're on Talk Radio. Hello.
Hi, James.
Here's John. You're through to Graham.
Yeah, congratulations on your award, by the way.
Thank you very much.
You deserve it. But don't lose the edge, you know?
No. Well, I'll try not to.
Right, now my question was, the Mayan people, in their ancient text, actually said that the secrets to the universe would be revealed to her, and that the answer was in between the paw of the Sphinx in Egypt. Did you know anything about that?
I'm not aware of any Mayan text which speaks of the Sphinx in Egypt, or of any Mayan text which says such a thing. But what I am aware of is the extraordinary Mayan calendar, which is a work of amazing scientific sophistication, which calculates the length of the solar year better than we do today in our calendar, and which does say that the Earth will be afflicted by a gigantic cataclysm in the very near future. When you convert the Mayan calendar into our calendar, they say that on the 23rd of December 2012 AD, all life will be brought to an end on Earth by a huge disaster.
Yeah, but then, like, as you said, it's up to us, though, isn't it? We had the choice. And the thing is...
This is the very strange and eerie thing that seems to be hinted at in all the ancient texts, yet somehow we bring this disaster on ourselves.
Yeah, but the thing is, all religions and beliefs are all fatalistic. There is always an end. Why can't it just go on?
Oddly, the ancient Egyptians weren't fatalistic like that. They felt that a great deal was in our own hands, and depicted it that way.
Why did the Egyptian civilization, Graham, suddenly sort of just fizzle out?
It didn't suddenly fizzle out. It lasted in recorded history for 3,000 years. It was an enormously stable society, and many of modern historians look on this as somehow a failure on the part of the ancient Egyptians, that they kept things the way they were and didn't change.
Moving forward.
And didn't appear to move forward. But you see, the way the ancient Egyptians saw it was they had created the perfect environment to nurture the human spirit, and since it was perfect, they saw no reason to change it. They thought that it worked very well, and travelers like Herodotus, who came to Egypt, testified to this. They say that the Egyptians were the happiest, the most serene, the most generous and decent people that they had ever encountered.
Another problem we've got is that the mankind is incredibly arrogant. You had that chap phone up earlier who's doing a degree in modern history or whatever. I have no degrees at all. I have qualifications, don't have a degree, but I've read modern history, and I'm reading ancient civilization work. And there you have it.
Yeah, I
think this is arrogant.
Absolutely, I absolutely agree with you. And our great hope is that more and more people today are refusing to be dictated to by so-called academic experts, and are making up their own minds.
John, thank you very much indeed.
This is Talk Radio. I can't use my 8.5 inch or my 15 inch.
In Wales. Do you think, Graham, we're trying to get back to the sort of what is the peace of mind, the peace of mind of Egyptian time that we've all raced and or we have to go? I think we have to. I think that what we're doing,
we're confronted by a choice as to what to make of our world and of our society. And more people today are realizing that in order to make an informed choice, we need to listen to the testimony of the ancients and not just to the testimony of modern scientists. We have to listen to what our ancestors had to say. And if we do listen to what they have to say and inform ourselves with that, then I do think the chances of making a better world are rather high.
Okay, Graham Hancock is with me. His new book, The Mars Mystery, A Tale of the End of Two Worlds, has just come out. It's all about what happened to the possibility of a civilization that used to exist on Mars that seemed to suddenly disappear. And how does that relate to the fact that this planet may well have had other civilizations that also disappeared? And are we in line, if we're not very careful, to bear the brunt of another attack is the wrong word. Onslaught is a better word from meteorite, not the bigger the meteorites, aren't they?
The best bet is a giant comet fragmented into many parts.
Okay, let's talk to Jonathan, who's on his car phone somewhere in Birmingham. Jonathan, you're on the air, and through to Graham.
Good morning. I was in a film that's just been launched called Deep Impact, and I don't play a very big role in it,
Any role's better than none, you know.
Not quite. There's a theme to the film, just about, and this huge meteorite going to hit Earth, and they come up with a plan to annihilate it and blow it away. My question is...
Hey, Jonathan, just before you ask the question, who starred in the movie?
Who starred in it, yeah. I'm an extra.
Oh, right, okay. I just wondered. Okay, go on.
Okay, so anyway, the question is, if we inherited, or if the Egyptians have inherited this knowledge to build pyramids, do all these sort of things, and the previous guys got zapped, it doesn't seem like they had a good plan for blowing away comets that are coming. So my real question here is, are we going to be clever in this form than the previous inhabitants?
I think that the previous civilization was taken by surprise by this disaster that brought the last ice age to an end, and I think that the survivors of the civilization did everything in their power to understand what had happened to them and to pass this knowledge down to the future. And I do think that there are intriguing references to what happened to the Earth in the ancient texts. And oddly enough, and it was one of the things that got me into this subject, there are intriguing references to the planet Mars in Egyptian tradition and in Mexican tradition as well.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. Let's talk to Helen in Herefordshire. Helen, you're on Talk Radio and through to Graham Hancock.
Good morning. I just wanted to ask you whether you knew anything about the pictures that the Russians had from Mars about 10 years ago. I saw them on a television news program, and they said that they looked like aerial pictures of Los Angeles, that it was sort of a huge city. Some of the buildings perhaps about a mile wide. There was, I think, even something that looked like a ruined suspension bridge. And the Russians said that there was going to be more news within the next month. And then we heard nothing more about it.
That's right. There was some very strange rumors, certainly, about photographs from Russian craft. Although the Russians have not had, at least officially, any very successful photographic missions to Mars. But some photographs, 20 or 30 frames, were sent back and did appear to show intriguing objects, and also the shadow of an object being cast on Mars from space, which some people have interpreted as a spacecraft. But I'm afraid the evidence that we have on what the Russians got in those photographs is so rumor laden and so thin on the ground that we can't say anything for sure about.
Haven't they released them now or not?
No.
No, they won't? Have they definitely got these photographs?
No, they don't definitely have.
All right. It could be a rumor.
Did you see the photographs?
No, I haven't seen the photographs, and I don't know anybody who has.
I saw them. I actually videoed the news report at the time, but I've lost the video now. But I mean, it was really incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, there were genuine pictures supposedly at the time.
And then it's been hushed up subsequently.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me. I think that the whole attitude of the scientific world to this problem on Mars has been extremely peculiar from the very beginning, and it's why I can't help feeling that there may be something more going on there than we realize.
Helen, thank you for your call. Graham, do you think there are civilizations on probably all our near planets, or have been at some time?
I don't know. Is the answer to that question. I think that the numbers, the statistics of the enormous quantity of stars that there are in the known universe, and the growing evidence that there are planets circling many of these stars, makes it very likely that there is intelligent life out there. We know that there's life in the universe because we're alive. The only question is, are we an absolutely unique and unrepeatable event, or are we something that is a general process within the universe? I tend to favor the latter view. I suspect that life is the essence of the universe. I think that's what the universe is for. I think it's a theater for life to experience itself in.
What is it? We have a trip going to, is it one of the moons of Jupiter or one of the moons of Saturn? I can't remember them.
Yes, moons of Jupiter and moons of other outer planets as well are all being surveyed at the moment, and there are interesting signs, particularly of water. And suggestions that there may be beneath a frozen crust on some of the moons, that there may be life in that water.
What we need to do, of course, and what part of your book is about, is we need to try and get the authorities and people interested in keeping an eye out for asteroids that are...
Two things need to be done. I mean, first of all, we have the Hubble Space Telescope at the moment, which is sending back enormously interesting pictures from deep space. We need another space telescope that's up there, which is also photographing in the infrared, because some of these objects come at us from the direction of the sun and are absolutely invisible to normal telescopes.
Is it like...
We need one which is dedicated to surveying Earth-crossing and potentially Earth-hitting objects.
Is it likely at this particular moment in time there is a huge foreign body winging its way towards us that we are not even aware of, and that our scientists are not aware of?
Yes, I think it's extremely likely that there is such an object. I'm persuaded by the calculations of the scientists, some of whose names I've already mentioned, which indicate the breakup of a huge comet in the solar system about 20,000 years ago, and that bits of which are still there. The calculations indicate they connect it to what is called the Taurid meteor stream, which we see meteors from twice a year, and that these meteors, which are just like sort of cosmic sparklers, are just the outer fringes of a huge cloud of debris which is whistling through the solar system and which crosses the path of the Earth.
But we have been hit. I mean, we've been hit apparently in Siberia. There was an
enormous explosion in Siberia in 1908. It's called the Tunguska event, and this was caused, calculations suggest, by a tiny object which was just 70 meters, what's that, about the size of a city block in diameter.
Had that
200 feet. Now that exploded in the air about 6 kilometers above the ground. And the consequence of that explosion was that 2,000 square kilometers of forest in Siberia was completely devastated and flattened. 400 kilometers distant from the epicenter, they were feeling huge earthquakes in the ground as a result of it. I mean, this was a major. People's clothes were set on fire hundreds of kilometers away by the fierceness of the explosion in the atmosphere that resulted from this. And this was just a tiny thing. And actually, it's very interesting that occurred in June of 1908, because June is one of the 2 times in the year when the Earth passes through the Taurid meteor stream. And the majority of scientists who are studying these matters think that Tunguska object, as it's called, was a fragment of this same giant comet that also ended the last...
Oh, that's wonderful. So we're just about to get in there now.
I believe that we're in a bombardment episode now. See, the interesting thing is that I touched on this a little bit earlier, is that we tend not to realize how much our lives on Earth are governed by the galaxy. Most people don't even think about this, but just as we're in orbit around the sun, the sun is in orbit around the center of the galaxy, and this orbit takes 250 million years to complete. And as the sun goes round the center of the galaxy in this orbit, it doesn't just move in a flat plane, but it behaves rather like a porpoise, going up and down through what's called the galactic plane. And when it's above or below the galactic plane, it's in a relatively quiet area of space. But when it's passing through the middle of the galactic plane, it's in a very lumpy area of space filled with things called gigantic molecular clouds and spiral arms. And when the solar system, because the sun tows the whole solar system along with it, passes through the galactic plane, this causes gravitational disturbance to the solar system. Now, it's known that the solar system is surrounded by an enormous cloud of comets. These clouds are called the Oort cloud, after the astronomer who first identified it. And it's estimated that there's 100,000 million comets sitting in the Oort cloud, some of which are giant comets, hundreds of kilometers in diameter. As the Earth passes through the galactic plane, the gravitational influence of the galactic plane throws some of these comets into the inner solar system, and they gradually migrate down into the inner solar system. It takes 5 or 6 million years for them to reach our part of space. And the evidence suggests that we passed through the galactic plane just about 5 or 6 million years ago, and that we can expect to be in a bombardment episode now as a result of this
year.
Right now, this time, this is our epoch, our generation.
Okay, we're actually been quite lucky so far over the last, they've missed us, but June is a bad time.
June is a bad time, and so is November.
Book your holidays. Andrew and Ken, you're on Talk Radio, through to Graham Hancock. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm very glad to get through, but you have to apologise me for my slight nervousness, because I'm not used to being like on Talk Radio talking to millions of people or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But
you're telling me you're an extraterrestrial next?
Well, how did you know?
Just intuition, I guess.
Yeah, but I agree with a hell of a lot of what Nigel Hancock is saying.
Graham Hancock, thank you.
Because at the end of the day, there's only a few people like him that is actually saying things that only maybe less than 1% of the population of this planet Earth is willing to stand up and say. And as far as what I'm concerned, I strongly believe that we are, especially as we are approaching the millennium, and especially since it's the line of the planet and different things like that, that we will be coming into contact with extraterrestrials. And these extraterrestrials, as Graham Hancock has been saying, have been with us since before I recorded history. And my personal opinion is, and not just my personal opinion is, but a lot of people of my persuasion, we believe that we are just but the physical manifestation of higher beings, and that we, as when it says in the holy books, not whether it's the Bible or whether it's the Vedas or whether it's any other holy book, it doesn't really make much difference. Whether you're a Red Indian, whether you're an Aborigine, or whether you're an Eskimo, makes no difference. That we are just in physical manifestations of their love, their hates, their jealousies. And as regards the floods, things like that, where you were talking about earlier, I mean, I'm no Christian, don't get me wrong. I mean, I don't have no disrespect as regards Christian, but it talks about a time when, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 6 and 7.
There were giants in the earth in those days.
Did you say that again?
There were giants in the earth in those days.
That's right, the Nephilim.
Yeah.
I spoke about the Nephilim because they were. It's in Genesis chapter 6. It speaks about the time in Genesis chapter 6, and I'm only a reasonable expert. I'm no great expert. But I'm only a reasonable expert in just say one holy book,
which is
the holy, what some people would call the Holy Bible, the Old Testament, the New Testament.
Right.
And he speaks about a time when even in verses 1, 2, and 3, when even the sons of the true God came down. And
when do you think, Andrew, this is likely to happen?
Well, according to not just what's written down in the Holy Book, but according to many other people. I mean, I don't know if you saw that television program the other day. I mean, I don't take much notice of these programs because they're just old, not old hat, but they're...
Yeah, so the question I ask, though, is when do you think this is going to happen?
Well, I think it's going to happen with, according to one book anyway. I can only tell you as regards one book, and I am no Christian, that within the generation that saw the First World War.
Hello, James. Hello, Graham. This is Bob in Hastings. I'm originally from Oxford. I saw the original photographs of Mars.
There's nothing to be ashamed of that you are in Hastings now, Bob.
Bye, James.
You're very nice, Bob. We can't all live in Oxford.
Lived in the Cali Road, James, for quite a while.
There's no other side of
that. I've been researching UFOs. I've investigated Mars.
Have you? How did you get there?
Old. I happen to believe the pyramids were probably built by the ancient giant, which you've just referred to, haven't you?
I quoted from Genesis 6, but I don't believe that. I think the evidence is compelling and overwhelming that the pyramids were built by the ancient Egyptians. What interests me is what the ancient Egyptians themselves say about their own history and about the source of their knowledge. I thought we're on a hiding to nothing to try to attribute the pyramids of Egypt to extraterrestrials.
Thank you, Bob. The pyramids actually weren't built as burial chambers, were they, nowadays?
I don't believe they were. It's a common assumption that the three great pyramids of Egypt were built as the tombs of three pharaohs, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure in the 4th dynasty, but there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever for this assumption. Later pyramids definitely were used as tombs, and they contain acres of inscriptions inside them, which tells us precisely what they were. But these pyramids contain no inscriptions whatsoever, and there's no evidence that they were built as tombs. No body, no mummy was ever found inside them, no grave treasures were ever found inside them, and they have enormously complex internal systems and passageways. I have my own view on what do
you think, therefore?
What they were. Well, we know that the ancient Egyptians were enormously interested in the afterlife, and they were interested in what happened to them after death, and they believed that their life was their opportunity to prepare for death, and that this opportunity should be used well. Their religious system had it that we make a journey after death through a particular region of the sky that they called the Duat. And in that journey, we're held to account for everything that we've done with our lives. And this relates to our moral actions, but also, very mysteriously, it relates to the knowledge that we've accumulated during life. Basically, the question is, did you use your life and your brain well, or did you just fritter it away and waste it? And in the ancient Egyptian view, if you wasted it, then you would pay a very, very heavy price in eternity. They believed that it was important to gain foreknowledge of this region of the sky through which they expected that their souls would travel after death, and the region of the sky included the constellation of Orion. And my friend and colleague Robert Bauval had demonstrated in his book The Orion Mystery that the three great pyramids of Egypt are laid out on the ground in the pattern of the three stars of the belt of the constellation of Orion. And I think this is the key to the whole mystery. I think that what the pyramids were a model, a three-dimensional interactive game, in a way, in which the pharaoh learned to prepare for his afterlife journey.
You said you don't think there was any extraterrestrial help in building them. You believe that the people of Egypt had built them. Do you think that they were more technically inept than we are now, or that we understand that they were?
I think that they were enormously technically accomplished. The Great Pyramid of Egypt is a precision instrument. It's an astonishing work of building and construction, and we should never downplay the achievement involved in laying 2.5 million blocks of stone.
Maybe there is some sort of, I mean, do you see that great movie Stargate?
Yeah.
Maybe there's some kind of pathway through there.
I really enjoyed the first 12 minutes of that movie. I think that the honest reaction to the Great Pyramid of Egypt is one of puzzlement and awe. It's not something that we could easily do today. It's something that is at the limit of what it's possible for human beings to do then or now. And it required an enormous level of skill and dedication and commitment to build it. And I don't think we have that skill and dedication and commitment today.
Simon in Hull, you're on the air.
Hello.
Yeah.
I also wanted to talk about the account in Genesis, and what it actually says is that spirit creatures came down from the heavens in order to have sex with women on the earth, and it was their offspring who were the mighty men. Now, these men were obviously not extraterrestrials; they were hybrids. Now, do you think they had anything to do with the building of the monument thing either?
See, I don't know whether we should take Genesis that literally or not. I've always felt that passage in Genesis is an extremely intriguing one, and that it does seem to cast back to some extraordinary episode in human history, but I wouldn't like to prejudge what that episode is. I wouldn't like to say definitely that it's to do with extraterrestrials or not. There could be many other explanations for it, including taking it at face value that it speaks of spiritual beings. Perhaps they weren't extraterrestrials. Perhaps, life is much more complex than we imagine.
But extremely powerful men on the earth would explain how these 200-ton blocks of granite were moved from Luxor.
Yeah, they would, but you could explain it in other ways too, through the ingenuity of the human mind and through focused effort and will. I prefer to explain it that way. The ancient Egyptians had the capacity to move very large blocks of stone right down to the end of their history. I'm convinced they knew something that we don't know, but I'm not yet convinced that they got that knowledge from extraterrestrials. But they certainly got their knowledge from somewhere.
You don't think it was a question of then rolling it on large logs and
no. I just can't buy that. The whole ramp and sledge theory. I mean, you have to consider the population of Egypt wasn't very large, 2 or 3 million people at the time the pyramids were built. It was a country that 9 months of the year was required to devote almost all of its labor force to agriculture, which leaves just 3 months a year for building a pyramid. And then you have to consider that there's 2.5 million blocks of stone to be laid in those 3 months every year, and the pyramid is supposed to have been built in 20 years. Well, it works out like something like 1 block every 4 minutes or less, which is a pretty demanding feat in terms of construction logistics.
But there could, as Simon says, there could have been these giants.
Well, yes, and we have to be, I think we have to be open to all manner of extraordinary possibilities. Just recognizing the very fact that we are alive today is an extraordinary possibility.
Simon, have you read Alan Alford's book, Gods of the New Millennium?
I haven't read that one, no. I've read a couple of Graham's books.
You should have a look at Alan Alford's book, Gods of the New Millennium. It's quite interesting. Have you read that, Graham? I'm sure you've.
I've got it. I've skimmed it. I haven't read it all.
It's fascinating. As all these theories are. Carl in London.
Oh, good morning.
Speak.
Yeah,
If the ancient Egypt was so perfect, why did it have slavery?
It didn't. The ancient Egyptians in the Old Kingdom period did not have slaves. This is a myth. It's a myth that the pyramids were built by slaves. There's absolutely no evidence whatsoever for this. The ancient Egyptians, at one or two periods in their history, did engage in small-scale military endeavors. They did invade other countries, but they never colonized or occupied them. They always came back. And if you go to the Old Kingdom, which is the essence of Egypt, you'll find no slavery, no military adventures, a focus on the spiritual life. But every society deteriorates somewhat over time.
You mean it was voluntary?
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. The work on the pyramids was done by a volunteer workforce.
So what about the fact in the Bible that it talks about slavery?
This is referring to a later period of Egyptian history. It's referring to the Ramesside period, Ramesses II. I'm not aware of overwhelming evidence that even Ramesses II had slaves, but certainly the Egyptians in that period were not quite the same morally as the earlier Egyptians had been.
Carl, yeah, haven't you had your dose of being on this? You calling me every night?
Hi. Oh, I was going to ask whether, there was a case for meeting aliens for sexual experience with frustrated spinster like myself in her 60s. It sounds great.
Frustrated at 60, aren't you supposed to finish with sex about?
Oh, Dom, James, you know that's not true, don't you? Anyway, hello, James.
No, I
hello,
don't know.
Graham.
Hi.
Read your book, Sign and the Seal, couldn't put it down.
Thank you.
And after reading it and hearing you speak today, I just don't know how you do it. I don't know how someone can have so much knowledge in their brain. I'm really very, very impressed.
Thank you. He's not about to abduct you, Denise, so you can... No.
It would be lovely. And the voice sounds good. So actually, to be perfectly honest with you, every question I has been shot down in flames or answered. But I was just wondering now whether in actual fact, after civilization of manned space flight to the moon, etc., and we are now relying on equipment, cameras, etc. Do you think that maybe NASA might be more funded if perhaps they proposed another a manned space flight to Mars? I know that Mars, as it was, well, as you say, it could have been a Garden of Eden before the collision or whatever happened to it. But do you think that maybe funding would come? People would be more interested, government?
NASA has a plan to put a manned mission on Mars within the next 20 years, and I believe it will. And I only believe that when that is done, if they put the manned mission in the right place, which is the area called Sidonia, will we settle the issue of whether these strange monumental structures on Mars are artificial or not. But the interesting question isn't really so much the question of the amount of funding NASA has, because it has lots. I mean, $13 billion a year is big money by anybody's standards. The interesting question is the priorities that NASA applies to the allocation of that funding. And right now, for some reason, the organization seems to be dominated by an extremely boring bunch of geologists who just aren't interested in issues like this. I think what they need to do is switch their funding from some programs into others. And the manned landing on Mars, I regard as an absolutely top urgent priority, because I believe not just that we will settle the issue of whether there was intelligent life on a neighboring planet, which is an issue worth settling, for goodness sake, but also that we may learn the truth about the cataclysmic history of the solar system by landing on Mars.
Do you also think that if they found that these buildings were of perhaps one could say man-made or Mars-made people, do you think maybe this could go back into time when maybe there was a civilization which was doing interplanetary travel between Mars and the Earth?
Very interesting point. I've asked myself this question many times. If the pyramids on Mars are artificial, and I underline the word if, then we have to face the fact that there are pyramids on the Earth as well, and we know they're artificial. And we have to ask ourselves, how likely is it to be a coincidence that there are pyramids on Mars and pyramids on Earth? Or is there likely to be some connection? If there is a connection, then there's only a very limited range of possibilities as to what that connection could be. Either a civilization from Mars visited the Earth and taught us the art of pyramid building, or an earlier civilization from Earth visited Mars and taught them the art of pyramid building, or there was a third-party civilization, an interstellar civilization, which visited both Mars and the Earth. But if those pyramids are artificial, I personally don't think it's a coincidence that there's pyramids on the Earth.
And are the pyramids in Egypt supposedly aligned with the pyramids on Mars, or is that just
no? There's no evidence of that. The only certain evidence is that the Great Pyramids of Egypt have the Great Pyramid itself has internal shafts which point at specific stars, and that they are laid out on the ground in the pattern of specific stars. So there's a very strong sky-ground connection between these, involving the pyramids on Earth. Some of the geometry that is found in the pyramids on Earth, such as the value pi that we use to calculate the circumference of a circle from its diameter, are also found in the structures on Mars. Measurements have been done on the NASA photographs, and they yield recognizable geometry similar to the geometry of the pyramids on Earth. And while I don't regard that as conclusive, I regard it as a first step case for a further investigation of this mystery. And I'm just disappointed that so far scientists just want to dismiss it because they're afraid of looking foolish.
Okay, Denise, thank you very much indeed. Maybe we'll do a program on sex in your 60s. I feel it coming on as I get closer.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Peter in Bristol, you're on Talk Radio.
Oh, hello there. It's this aliens business. I just reiterated the call you had not so long ago. What is their fascination with rectal examination, basically?
No idea. Can you give me a little light on that, for a little light on it or not?
Yeah, but you hear it from almost, I've seen a few documentaries on this.
Well, maybe you need to look at the orifices in turn. I don't know.
Well, no, they're always very specific. You hear this from every one of these.
Well, isn't it the same when you go to a doctor? They want to examine you and find out what's wrong with you. Isn't that the first place they look? Thank you, Peter. Back after this.
Gear Fat Man. Here's a question. The conversation.
I have periods in life where I actually forget.
So, Ash, what is she laughing at tonight? What is wrong with her? I don't know. Give her a couple of bloody drinks before the program.
Aliens calling me and Mark. She liked it.
She's loving about rectum cool. What? Rectal. She likes rectals. Yeah, she seems to. I don't know what that's all about. She's anally retentive. Yeah, there's a possibility of that. I mean, maybe people can ring her up and ask her, you need to get some colonic irrigation. No, give her a hose and maybe you need colonic irrigation. Yeah. Why don't we do that on the show you clean your car with? That'll do it. Yeah, or we could use an air one as well. Yeah, get the right pressure.
Yeah, so, what are you going to use as the receptacle?
A bucket. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Sorry about this, Craig. We're just working out another program. So we will colonically irrigate the dominatrix on the show. Just give us a ring and tell us if you think that's okay or if it's too tasteless, even for us, on one of those shows which are completely unconstructed, as Lloyd Grossman would say. Right, let's go back to the calls. Graham Hancock is with me, and we're a little light relief that colonic irrigation is definitely that. David in St. Helens, you're on the air. Speak. Oh, hang on, David. I've got to press your button, then you can speak. Very technical. Yes, David.
Oh, hello. I was wondering if Graham thought there was any link between the fact that most ancient civilizations seem to have a deluge myth, and could the Ark have actually come from Mars if there was if thousands of comets smacked into the surface?
A very interesting point. I mean,
can you explain that to me? Because I didn't.
Well, I think what the call is getting at is that the idea of Noah's Ark as a boat which survives the flood by floating on the waters, one can envisage a different kind of ark if you had a civilization advanced enough, which would be a large spacecraft that you put people off planet for a while the disaster occurs, and then put them back on it, or put them on a neighboring planet, and again, I don't know what I tried to examine.
Graham, sorry, so what I haven't heard that theory before. It's quite fascinating. So you reckon that maybe a civilization on this planet, or a civilization from another planet, came here, took a species from this planet on this massive aircraft, took them away, and then brought them back.
That would be one possibility, or an advanced enough previous civilization confronted by such a disaster might have, just as we might do today. I mean, if it became clear that in 10 years' time, our planet was going to be destroyed, that life was going to become impossible on this planet as a result of a collision with a comet, and it was clear that we couldn't prevent that collision from taking place, then you can be sure that the best minds of our scientists would be focused on trying to find a way for some people to survive. And one way, which certainly would be looked at, would be some kind of orbiting space station.
We wouldn't go.
Well, I think it would be extremely selective. I'm quite sure that you and I would not be there, yeah.
David?
Yeah.
Was that about it?
Yeah, that was great.
Okay, thanks very much indeed for your call. Ken in Basildon, you're on the air.
Hello, James.
Hi.
All right, can I ask a very simple question?
Yeah.
Does your guest believe that when the planet goes bang, that he will survive after his death, based on what he's learned from these ancient writings?
I believe firmly in the afterlife. This again is an area where you find scientists sort of chuckling into their sleeves whenever somebody mentions it, because they're convinced that there's no life after death. But actually, when a scientist, I mean Richard Dawkins as an example, says categorically that there is no life after death, this man is not making a scientific statement, because there's no evidence whatsoever for the statement that he's making. He's actually making a statement of his own rather miserable and narrow religious belief. Because it is a religious belief that there is no life after death, just as it is a religious belief that there is life after death. I think it's a 50-50 shot in logic, and I think that the balance that is slightly tipped in favor of life after death because of the enormous accumulated testimony of the ancient texts, and because of interesting things like near-death experiences that people have.
Yeah. But then you find there are more people like yourself these days who are looking at life after death logically rather than religiously.
Definitely.
And I think it's a perfect thing. I
think it's a very important thing for people to do. I think it's one of the reasons we're here, is to consider the mystery of being alive, and to realize the very serious possibility that we really may be held accountable for what we do in life. And since it's a 50-50 shot at the very least that it could be that way, it's very sensible for people to live their lives in somehow a decent and thought out manner, rather than in an indecent and cruel and vicious way.
If another reason, just in case.
Yeah, I mean, it's logical, it's logical. Take advantage of this incredible opportunity of being alive and make the best of it, and make the best of it for everybody around you.
Thanks, Ken. How sure are you, or how am I mean, that we are different? I mean, we're obviously different from other species, but they all have brains to a certain extent. So the great whales of the oceans presumably or supposedly have bigger brains than we have.
It's a very strange and weird thing to be alive in any shape or form. I mean, why is something a monkey rather than a stone, or a human being rather than a piece of wood? I mean, it's a very odd thing, and really, this is not a matter which any science has ever come to grips with. I mean, for all I know, the whole of life could be some sort of vast virtual reality game. I mean, the whole objective of virtual reality games is to produce a virtual reality which is so real that we can't distinguish it from reality anymore. Maybe that's what we're all doing. Maybe we're living out an experience, and that at the end of it, we step out of it and realize, we were playing a game all the way. Look, who knows? You see, this is the thing: is you just can't make categorical statements on this. I think that my own guess is that life is an opportunity to experience things in material form that cannot be experienced in any other form, and that there are various levels of life.
Maybe we've played this game, or successive civilizations have played this game, and the win is that civilization carries on, and many times it doesn't. They've lost the game, bang,
Go back.
Go back to scratch,
Absolutely.
and who knows? We all go off with a meteor, a comet, whatever, or we go on to the next level. Seems to me a very reasonable proposition, and I think it's as reasonable as any other proposition.
David in London, you're on Talk Radio through to Graham Hancock.
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
You mentioned before about there being no proof that the Egyptians had slaves. I'm actually Jewish myself, and it's recorded in our Bible that the Egyptians took us as slaves for 210 years.
Yeah, it is. It just, it could be.
I'm not saying that's any proof of it. You don't have to believe in it, but that's what we believe in.
I know it's what you believe in. I'm not certain at all that it was true.
And also, I'm not sure if I think some people believe that the Jews were the ones who built the pyramid. I don't know for sure.
Certainly there is this view. Again, there's no historical evidence for it, particularly so since the period of the so-called Jewish enslavement in Egypt was at least 1,000 years later than the time when the pyramids were built.
But I'm only saying I'm not sure. I'm not that fond. I know I'm only mentioning the fact that they were.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I know that this is stated quite categorically in the Bible, and it has been the source of some misunderstandings over the construction of the pyramids.
Right. I'm not saying, and you mentioned before the fact that the Egyptians never battled against other people.
They did.
But I'm not saying that they battled against the Jews, and so the Jews actually went there themselves.
They did engage in short-lived foreign adventures in later periods of Egyptian history, particularly in the New Kingdom, which was the time, if there ever was a time, when Jews were in Egypt. We know Jews were in Egypt. The other question is whether they were there as slaves or not. I suspect it's more likely that they were there as voluntary workers.
I don't know. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they weren't. But there again, you're entitled to your view.
That's right.
I wasn't. No, I was saying the reason why I brought up the fact that you said about battle. They went there themselves. I'm saying they eventually got taken into slavery over the years. And in fact, they were there for 210 years. So you were saying before they took about 20 years to build the pyramid.
The Great Pyramid is, if the Orthodox Egyptological theory is right, that the Great Pyramid was built by the pharaoh Khufu during his reign, we know that he reigned for 23 years, therefore that's the maximum period that could have been taken to build it.
Right. Okay then.
Thank you for your call.
Thanks very much.
Okay, David, bye. Let's go to Asia. Andy, you're on Talk Radio through to Graham Hancock.
Oh, okay. Good evening, James. Would like to mention a scripture in the Bible that talks about the earth staying forever. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 4. It says, a generation comes and a generation goes. It says, but the earth abides forever. So we see God has a purpose for the earth and he won't allow anything to happen to it. Because in the Psalms he says, the evildoers will be cut off. In the Psalm 37, 9 to 11. And verse 11 says, but the meek will possess the earth. That's what Jesus spoke about later on. He said the meek would possess the earth and live forever upon it in abundance of peace. So it wouldn't be destroyed by anything from outside.
I think that you're probably quite right. The Earth as a planet will continue to survive any conceivable asteroid bombardment, or comet bombardment, short of a collision with another planet-sized body. But whether life and human civilization will survive on a totally devastated planet is a matter for which I personally would not rely entirely on biblical testimony.
Could I just say one other thing? In Isaiah 40 and verse 22, if you like to make a wee note of that, it says there, this is Isaiah speaking, it says, he who sits above the circle of the earth. And that was written in the year 732. And it was only in 1969 when we went out with a spacecraft. If we could look back and see the earth was a circle, it's a rugby ball or anything, right? Yet he found that all those years ago.
Yeah, that
was a bit true.
They had this knowledge, yes, absolutely. I believe they did.
Good point, Andy. Thank you very much indeed. Now we have only got a few moments to go, Graham. And I'm just going to see where we're going to go off to next. I think we might take number 2 if that's any good. Or let's go to 5 and then we'll come back to Keith in Norfolk first. You're on Talk Radio. Hi, Keith.
Hi there.
Yeah.
Don't you think your two subjects tonight could have been linked? The secrets from Fatima and his warnings about nuclear proliferation? Could it not be that the nuclear tests are pushing the Earth into the path of something, and we're being warned about it?
Well, I don't know.
I don't think that they are. I think that nuclear tests are amongst the ultimate follies of mankind, and that we're like a bunch of monkeys sitting displaying our genitals to one another by blowing up bombs on neighboring countries, close to neighboring countries' borders, and the very possession and boasting about nuclear weapons is to me is a very bad sign for the future of the human race, and it's very unlikely that we'll concentrate on the real problems that confront us.
I don't know.